Okay, we're here for our second week of our prophecy update this year, and exciting about some of the things we're going to cover. We're going to talk about the land and what Jesus said we could expect in the land of Israel in these, as we approach these end days, approaching the time of the rapture and what he has in store. One of the big ones would be the rebirth of Israel itself, which took place in 1948. I think I mentioned that on a flyby last week, but this would be just about a year and a half before I was born. And my brother, I think, had just been born when this took place. But it was an amazing thing. The scriptures foretold it because the disciples had asked him in that great passage on the Mount of Olives we pick it up in Matthew chapter 24, verse 3. Later, Jesus sat on the Mount of Olives, and his disciples came to him privately and said, "Tell us, when would all of this happen? What sign will signal your return and the end of the world?" And so we have prophecies that talk about the Lord's return and the land being tied together. In fact, I'm going to have Micah go ahead and read that. Then later on in that chapter 24, verse 32 to 35, Jesus gets specific about it.
It says, "Now learn a lesson from the fig tree. When its branches bud and its leaves begin to sprout, you know that summer is near. In the same way, when you see all these things, you can know his return is very near, right at the door. I tell you the truth, this generation will not pass from the scene until all these things have taken place. Heaven and earth will disappear, but my words will never disappear."
And he's bouncing off of the Old Testament prophecy 700 years earlier from Isaiah 66, verse 8. "Who has ever seen anything as strange as this? Who has ever heard of such a thing? Has a nation ever been born in a single day? Has a country ever come forth in a mere moment? By the time Jerusalem's birth pangs begin, her children will be born." And so it was just that sudden. Of course, Hitler's pushing the Jews all over the place and trying to exterminate them. They fled and they fled and they fled, and they finally fled back to the original homeland of Israel, which was pretty vacant at the time. We had some Arabs living there. The Palestinians did not live there at that time. And so anyway, it came down to a war with some other factions. I know that places like Libya and Egypt got very involved in that. But they fought for their independence to be a country again. And they did that in 1948, as the Bible said here. And we've never seen that before.
Yeah.
A country that had gone out of business, it'd be like America going out of business for 2,000 years. Suddenly, in a day, we're back in business. Yeah. It's impossible.
That's insane to think about. I just think about America not being here for 2,000 years. Like, our country's not even 250 years old.
Yeah.
And imagine 2,000 years of not existing, and then all of a sudden, one day goes by and we're like, "Hey guys, we're back at it again. We're here again."
We'll talk about the language here in a minute, but that also was part of that whole process. And in 1967, we had the famous Six-Day War. Because while they had the land, there was a lot of petitioning that took place that was negotiated by Winston Churchill, and I think it was Roosevelt from our country and some others. And so they petitioned it off where those who were fighting against them had a place, but then they kept encroaching and kept encroaching. And so finally they launched an attack, a surprise attack on Yom Kippur. Egypt especially came in and hit them, and they turned around and won that war in 6 days. And I remember reading about this. It was a prime minister at that time, Levi Eshkol, saying, "The threat of destruction that hung over Israel since its establishment, which was about to be implemented, has been removed." He added, "For the first time in 19 years, Jews are again free to pray at the Wailing Wall and at other shrines to Judaism and Jerusalem and to Hebron." And so they fought for their independence, and Jerusalem is now the capital of Israel. And just 4 years ago, or 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, under Trump, I guess it was under Trump, so it would be 5 years ago, our embassy was finally moved after being promised all these years into Jerusalem.
And we see that time and time again with October 7th, how for some reason, like this wouldn't happen in any other country, but for some reason we think that because it's Israel, like, oh, you're allowed to have these other states and other people around you, and so we put them in place in the Gaza Strip. And what happened? October 7th happened.
Right.
And it's like every single time this happens, the Arabs encroach on the land. And I was reading in Nehemiah, and it was one of those things where it's like, man, if he if he was fighting, that would be like that was the punch. And Nehemiah said to the kings and to the Arabs around, he says, "You have no historical mark. You have no right. You have no legal right to this land." And
Posterity, I think you said.
it is like it's been true for the entire time. For some reason, Satan wants the land that he knows Jesus is going to come down on, that Jesus is going to reign on. And for some reason, there is this huge clash. But every single time the Lord's faithful, he comes through.
It's an interesting day that we live in because we're getting ready to go to Israel shortly. And I think it's just 4 months out at this point. And I see that Benjamin Netanyahu has said that they are going to go ahead and take Gaza back. They've taken about half of it at the north already. They're going to go ahead and take it back because what is there was not agreed upon in the beginning. It has been a terrorist issue ever since. And but I was thinking about it the other night. I thought, well, in the end times, in the millennial period, Israel will expand exponentially larger than it is. It will go all the way over to the Euphrates and way up into Lebanon. And so what is going to happen with them taking back Gaza now? Get ready for more, because it's going to be a whole lot bigger when the Lord sets up his kingdom here. Pretty exciting.
I don't understand the whole thought process either of, like, why do they think it's theirs? Like, it's never in history been their land. It's always been Israel's.
Yeah.
Like since 5,000 years ago.
I think the only thing I could say is that, the descendants of Ishmael were a wild man. And as one of I think it was the son of Yasser Arafat who became a Christian, he was asked about what would it take to calm him down, what it would take to appease the situation. He said nothing. Yeah. They just want to fight.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting.
No other country would be like that, though. Like we don't house our enemies and give them a place to congregate and say, well, you guys could stay here, and then they're promising to destroy all of us, and we're just like, cool.
I won't have him read it. I was going to have him read Psalms 83, but just for time's sake, I won't. But David describes in chapter 83, verses 2 to 8, the countries that will surround Israel and will be warring and be a problem for them. And what's interesting is they weren't the countries of that day. They're the countries of today. That's fascinating to me that these things were so foreseen in that way by the Lord that he said, well, here's the countries that will be a conflict against you. But they didn't truly exist as countries at that time as they do today. Yeah, it's interesting. There will be a couple other things. There's going to be, I'm going to come back to the language. There's going to be a bringing back of the Ethiopian Jews. Again, so we led a little piece of that last week. But that's a part of what will take place. That is one of the signs of the return of the Lord, the Ethiopian Jews coming back. And I said there was that, I think I mentioned the movie last week, the Red Sea Diving Club, I think it's called. That's a true story. It's a great movie. It's a true story. But supposedly, historians tell us that the Queen of Sheba and Solomon had a child. We don't know if this is true, but a lot of historians go along with that. And therefore, we have a huge Jewish population down in Africa, northern coast, Ethiopia, and places like that. When this was written, this is before Solomon was ever married, even had an opportunity for children. Yeah, God prophesied the Ethiopian Jews, which there were none at that time, would be coming back. Well, they were under attack from Islam for the last several years and being slaughtered. Yeah. And so that movie, as we talked about last week, saw the bringing back of a great many people, and that started a great mass exodus of getting Jews who are black from Ethiopia back here. And to date, there's about 185,000 that have returned. And when we go down to Beersheba, you'll see a great many of that population that is there at that time. I read this here that at the beginning of this return, the report said the government agencies are involved in this rescue mission. And the Foreign Minister Ariel Sharon has called for an emergency airlift, and government officials are examining the credentials of the families involved so they verify they have the right to immigrate. But that's the beginning of it. And like I say now, nearly 200,000 have already returned into Israel. And this is a fascinating thing. Zephaniah 3:10 says, my scattered people who live beyond the rivers of Ethiopia will come and present their offerings in these last days. We also see Jews coming in from all over the world. We saw a lot of Jews in Russia when we ministered over there who have since immigrated over. People we've gotten to know over the years from Kazan, Russia. that are in Israel. If you go to Israel today, you'll find a great many people who speak Russian there because they're Russian Jews and they have immigrated. And a lot of them are not Christians. They don't know why they're there. They have just been called there by the Lord. It's fascinating.
Yeah, his will be done.
Absolutely.
His word never fails and never stops. It never falls short. And what he has spoken, regardless of their beliefs or anything else, it's going to happen.
Absolutely. You also said there would, in that same chapter of Zephaniah, the verse before, that there would be a pure language in the end days. Then I will purify the speech of all people so that everyone can worship or honor the Lord together. It's interesting. The word pure is from the Hebrew word, which actually means chosen. And I think this would go back to the Hebrew tongue, which the Old Testament was written in.
Yeah.
And now I know this is really emblematic of the millennial time under Jesus Christ, being the rule of it all. But the fact is, the Hebrew language is fascinating because it was a dead language.
Yeah.
Absolutely dead. The Egyptian languages didn't come back. Even the Greek language, the Greek we have today is not the same as the New Testament Greek.
Yeah.
People who know Greek today, who come from Greece, they can't really read my Greek Bible at all. It's changed a great deal. And that was the same with the Hebrew language until they readopted it. I said Eliezer ben Yehuda. We went to Ben Yehuda Street. They've named it after him. But early in the last century, as they were broaching becoming a nation, they weren't even there yet. He says he just felt this strongly in his heart. He says, from this point forward, my household, he had a lot of kids, will only speak Hebrew. That's all we'll ever speak again. And he taught them, and they went out into the schools. They had 11 children or something like that, and they spoke nothing but Hebrew. And therefore, it became the language of Israel. And anybody immigrating to Israel today, they speak in that language. And it's a revived language. It's the only language that's truly been revived, not just in writing, but in spoken form. It's the only one. And it was dead for almost 2,000 years.
I would love to know the odds of just having a dead language for 2,000 years and then having that language coming back to life. I would love to know the odds if somebody prophesied it, 3,000 years ago. What are the odds that 3,000 years from now we would have a dead language come back to life?
It's never happened before.
And then what are the odds that not only that, but they would retake their land that was promised to them, that was theirs? Yeah. Like what are the odds of this stuff happening? Yet so many people believe that this is just an old storybook.
Well, they're fools if that's what they believe. They're willfully not seeing, and that's the problem with some people. They just will not see. They were talking about the language, and they said today they believe the spoken, with all of its inflections, as well as the written, is as exactly as it was in the days of Moses. Exactly the Hebrew they have then, with the exception of modern words like airplane and things that didn't exist at that time. But they believe that they have all the inflections and everything exactly the way it was. It's the Lord just setting it up. Yeah. Some people say the language of heaven will be Hebrew. I don't know that, but I do know that it will be like heaven in that everybody in the land will be able to speak and worship the Lord together. So in that millennial period, those that come up and worshiping from other countries in the sacrifices, they're going to come up. They're going to have to learn Hebrew. Yeah. Period.
It's so awesome to look at this point in history where never before in history could an entire nation be scattered across the entire world and then all come back within the same generation, except for with airplanes and different, transportation that we have like today.
Yeah.
Never before could it happen, but yet all of a sudden in the last days when knowledge is increased, all of a sudden now this can happen. Yeah. And God has just set it up, and it's like right in front of our faces, like any time.
And it's all taking place at one time, so to speak. I mean, within years.
Within a generation.
Within my generation. Yeah. Actually, all of this has taken place. I think it's fascinating. When you go to Israel this time, we're going to go to a place that I have not been to since my second trip. That would be like 18 years ago. When we go down to the Dead Sea, we're going to come up straight across instead. Normally we go up to Jerusalem, but we're going to cut across west and go to Beersheba. And the interesting thing about that is that for so many years, 2,000 years, it has been a wasteland. It's been the Mojave Desert. It's been sand pits and everything. but it looks more like Iowa today. You're going to get to see that. You'll see the tracts of land and all that's been done for a couple reasons, which I'll bring up here. Also, when you've been to Galilee already up there, that used to be, when Mark Twain visited it many years ago, it was just a marshland. Today, it's well structured. They grow bananas and papayas and pineapples up there. And as you come down the Jordan River, you'll find dates and palms and that stuff all the way down the way. The land is being transformed when you come up through Carmel and that whole area. If you cut inland, it's green. It's just it's nothing like what the rest of the Mideast. The rest of the Mideast are sand dunes. Not in Israel. They have it's more like being in Southern California when you drive through there. It's fascinating. There's some scriptures that prophesied of that. It says in Isaiah 27:6, the time is coming when Jacob's descendants will take root. Israel will bud and blossom and fill the whole earth with fruit.
Isn't that so true right now?
Yeah.
Like how much is exported from Israel?
They say 80 to 90% of all of Europe is supplied by Israel.
That's so wild, and it's like
You know how much Jordan sends out? None. They're right next door.
Yeah.
In fact, I was reading about this. It's fascinating. With this thought here, I think I wrote this down. Yeah. Associated Press reported that while the government is still at odds with the West in military, Iraq's ongoing drought is the worst in almost 100 years. The UN said that the country will soon face a catastrophic time if new aid funds are not immediately found. That, they lost about 70% of their crops in the last few years, and Israel has increased every decade some 10% in rainfall. In fact, they're having huge rains over there right now. I saw in the Corman Caves these big waterfalls washing things away. It was pretty fascinating. But they've had an absolute drought. Rainfall has increased 10% each decade here. More than 200 million trees have been planted, which is really a fulfillment of Isaiah 35:7. The parched ground will become a pool, and springs of water will satisfy the thirsty land. Marsh grass and reeds and rushes will flourish where desert jackals once lived. I like that. It was once a land of milk and honey promised to them in Numbers, and they had that, but it became desolate after, by the time Jesus showed up, it had just gotten kind of repopulated at that point. And ever since then, and then after 70 AD, again, it's a wasteland for all these. But now we see just a tremendous thing. And they say that Jordan and the other countries around them have seen a drought as much as 10% every decade going down. And while Israel's going up, and they're right next door to each other. How is that?
Yeah, it's the blessing of the Lord, the favor of the Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess the point of all of that is that they asked Jesus in chapter 24 of Matthew, verse 3, well, when is all this stuff going to take place? And he began to list out some of the things. And we're going to talk about those things over the next 5 more weeks. But one of the things was Israel becoming a nation, which we talked about last week. One of them was the return of the Jews from Ethiopia, also the reborn language, also them becoming a fertile region in which they really have a flyby over if you are flying over the countries, because you can't really do that because of airspace issues, but if you fly over Egypt right below them, it's sand.
Yeah.
You fly over Jordan, it's sand. You fly over Israel right there, it's Iowa.
Yeah, that's nice.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
And that's just that didn't exist a few years back. I mean, I guess 100 years ago, it doesn't look anything like it looks today.
You see the effects too of it's not just, obviously their technology has grown. I mean, there's so many innovations that come out of Israel and their agriculture, all that. But just the simple rainfall, there's the skull where Jesus was crucified. And 100 years ago, there's a picture from like 100 years ago, and you see it clearly. Now you look at it, and it kind of just looks like, if I wasn't looking at it and I didn't know, I would probably miss it.
I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago, they had a large rainstorm that washed a good deal of that face at Golgotha. I still could see it and everything, but but the picture I have in my office that's over 100 years old, that shows more detail. It looks more like Peter Pan's Skull Island.
Yeah, and like it just follows the pattern that we see, which every decade we're getting a lot more rain there, and all of a sudden it went from like, you could see it for the last 2,000 years, like you couldn't miss it.
Yeah.
For the last 2,000 years, and now the last decade, it's like I have to actually look because there's so much rainfall that it's actually affecting all the grounds and everything.
Yeah, they've had to do what we've done out here in Southern California with the Hoover Dam years ago. We had all this marsh area going all the way down to San Diego and whatnot, and they had to be able to control that coming in there from the Colorado River. They've had to do the same thing there. They've had to do the same exact thing because of all this flooding that took place. But now they have it all controlled, diverted, and it's instead piped out and feeding all the farmlands.
And they have such great technology there, such great innovation in agriculture.
Yeah. It's a wonderful place.
Yeah.
I want to go. I'm looking forward to seeing it. We're going there about 4 months. But I wonder before the Lord comes back how much more opportunity there will really be because everything's firing up over there. And it's exciting times that we live in, you know,
Awesome.
I think.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add to that?
I cannot wait to go.
Yeah, I cannot wait to go. 4 months, and it's coming fast, so we're looking forward to that. Okay, we'll see you next week. We're going to talk a little bit more. Next week, we're going to talk a little more about the future temple and the anointing oil that has been reborn, which is it's a key in the Bible. It's one of those signs that the Lord is coming back, and He's getting everything ready. When we go, one last thing. When we go through the old city this time, they have a place there. It's not really a museum. It's a interesting little place where you can go and see many of the utensils that have already been made for the future temple. We'll show you a couple of artist renditions from over there of what they think that temple will look like and where it will be. The parking structures under it and everything. They've really got it all designed out. Architects have gone to work on this, so I don't know if that's the final one to go with, but it's pretty interesting. We'll try to get that up on the screen next week. Okay? All right. We'll see you next week.